Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're kind of playing medical detective to uncover a hidden truth about cognitive decline that completely reframes how we view aging. If you've ever worried about a loved one getting older, or maybe even thought about your own cognitive longevity, you've definitely been told to watch out for specific red flags. We all know the cliches, right? Finding the car keys in the refrigerator, forgetting a grandchild's birthday, asking the exact same question 3 times in a single hour. But what if the medical community has found that the most common warning sign we look for is actually showing up years too late? What if the real canary in the coal mine looks completely different?
So let's jump right in. If I asked you, what is the true first sign of dementia or Alzheimer's, your mind probably jumps immediately to memory. And hey, that's completely understandable. We've been conditioned by decades of movies, TV shows, and heartbreaking personal stories to believe that memory loss is the absolute starting line of cognitive decay. It's just deeply ingrained in us that forgetting is step one. But decades of clinical data and neurological research actually prove that the very first functional warning sign is the loss of financial capacity. That's right, it's money, not memory. Long before someone forgets a loved one's face or loses their way on a familiar street, they lose the ability to comprehend a bank statement or balance a checkbook. This deterioration of the executive function needed to manage money independently is the true first red flag. And here's the kicker, this specific decline can appear 3, 4, or even 5 full years before traditional memory loss ever sets in. Here is our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The true first warning sign. 2. Inside the aging brain. 3. The target on their backs. 4. Detecting the decline. And finally, number 5. Proactive strategies for protection. All right, kicking things off with section 1. The true first warning sign. A shift in understanding. To really get why this happens, we have to understand what financial capacity actually is. It isn't just knowing how to count coins or recognizing a dollar bill. Financial capacity is a highly complex matrix of executive function, new learning, and working memory required to independently manage money. In the medical world, it's considered a foundational instrumental activity of daily living, or an IADL. So what does that actually mean? Well, an IADL is a complex task that lets someone live independently in a community. We're talking way beyond basic survival skills like eating or dressing. It requires advanced reasoning, judgment, and the ability to project consequences into the future. Put simply, an older adult's financial capacity directly dictates their ability to remain autonomous. Let's bring this down to earth. Think about a retired engineer. This is someone who maybe managed complex businesses, designed intricate systems, or handled highly diversified investment portfolios their entire life. Suddenly, they start making completely erratic investments. Maybe they pay the exact same electric bill 3 times in a single month because they just can't balance a checkbook register anymore, or they fall for a glaringly obvious text message phishing scam. This isn't a sudden drop in their overall intelligence. It's a highly specific, targeted failure of their cognitive networks. And honestly, what's so heartbreaking about this stage is the frustration. The person is often intensely aware that something is slipping. They feel the confusion, but they lack the specific cognitive tools to stop it or articulate what's going wrong.
Which brings us to section 2, inside the aging brain, the neurobiology of money.
So why does this happen first? Well, the brain's architecture degrades in a very predictable sequence. It really comes down to a battle between procedural knowledge and conceptual knowledge. Procedural networks govern multi-step tasks. Think of it like riding a bike. It involves a sequence of interconnected actions, balance, and real-time adjustments. In finance, procedural knowledge is the sequential math required to calculate an account balance or log in and pay a bill online. These networks fail remarkably early in diseases like Alzheimer's. On the flip side, conceptual declarative knowledge stays intact much longer. That's knowing what a bicycle actually is, even if you can't ride it anymore. In finance, it means knowing what the word bank means, or knowing the fundamental value of a $20 bill. This creates a really dangerous illusion. The individual can still sit at a dinner table and talk about money perfectly fine, completely masking the fact that they've lost the underlying procedural mechanics to safely handle it. Managing money is literally a full-body workout for your brain. It calls on multiple regions simultaneously, forcing them to talk to each other flawlessly. First, you've got the prefrontal cortex, which is heavily involved in executive control, planning from A to B to C, and organizing goal-oriented activities. Then there's the angular gyrus. Fascinatingly, imaging studies show that the physical size of this specific area directly correlates with financial skills in older adults. If it shrinks, financial capacity drops. And of course, the hippocampus manages the underlying memory. Making just one financial decision requires a high-speed neural conversation between all these regions. Because the pathway is so complex, even the earliest neurodegenerative changes, like microscopic lesions in just one of these areas, act like a roadblock. They completely disrupt complex multi-stage financial decisions before anything else is noticeably affected. And we see this play out in a very predictable, staged sequence. It happens in distinct steps. Step 1, complex reasoning and estate holdings fail. Step 2, mid-level tasks fail, like bank statements and checkbook management. It isn't until step 3, much later down the line, that basic cash transactions and declarative knowledge finally go. There's a profound tragedy hidden in step 1. Because complex reasoning fails first, the folks who have spent a lifetime building the most complex wealth, navigating diverse portfolios, handling family trusts, are paradoxically hit in their most vulnerable spots first. Their greatest financial assets literally become their greatest liabilities. This sequence proves that early financial mistakes are a structural consequence of neurobiology, not just a personal failing or carelessness.
Let's shift gears to Section 3, the target on their backs, the exploitation epidemic.
We're looking at a massive, largely silent epidemic here. A staggering 1 in 20 older adults is financially exploited. Just think about how high that number is. Because this specific cognitive decay attacks their financial judgment while leaving their conversational and social skills pretty much intact, it paints a massive target on their backs. And we have to remember the broader economics here too. Household wealth is heavily concentrated in the 65 and older demographic. They control trillions of dollars in accumulated assets, pensions, and home equity. This sheer concentration of wealth makes them incredibly lucrative marks for sophisticated scammers, predatory telemarketers, and sadly, even opportunistic family members looking for an easy payday. There's some genuinely startling data from the Wayne State Institute of Gerontology from 2019. Researchers looked at longitudinal data and found that just a 10 to 15% decline in cognitive ability, which is barely perceptible to a casual observer, equated to a massive 15 to 18% loss of total wealth over just a 2-year period. But here is the absolute scariest part of this research. 61% of the samples suffering this financial hemorrhaging remained entirely undiagnosed and untreated. Let that sink in. The majority of these folks were actively losing their life savings, and they hadn't even been flagged by a doctor yet. They were trapped in a silent window of vulnerability where the money just vanished long before a medical professional ever stepped in.
So why is this window so catastrophic? It's because the decline specifically wipes out a person's scam radar right from the get-go. They literally lose the executive function needed to determine if an offer is legit or a complete fabrication. Add to this a slower processing speed for thinking through contingencies. What's a contingency? Think of it like playing chess in your head. It's the ability to say, if I wire this money to this stranger, then this happens, and then I won't be able to pay my mortgage, and then the aging brain losing financial capacity just can't play out those what-ifs anymore. When you combine those neurocognitive blind spots with the immense wealth concentration in this demographic, it's a perfect storm for total exploitation.
Moving on to Section 4, detecting the decline, measuring the unseen. So how do medical professionals actually catch this before an individual's life savings are totally wiped out? When families eventually bring these concerns forward, neurologists don't just guess or ask the patient how they feel about their money. They use highly standardized tools like the Financial Capacity Instrument, or FCI. The FCI actively measures 18 specific tasks across several distinct domains. A clinician will systematically test basic monetary skills, real-world cash transactions, checkbook management, bank statement management, overall financial judgment, and complex investment decisions. By pinpointing exactly which of these domains are failing, they can scientifically measure the unseen decline and accurately predict the patient's progression towards clinical dementia.
Clinicians also rely on tools like the Lichtenberg scale, which is a fantastic, person-centered approach focusing on real-world financial decisions. But here's the thing. Modern assessors are facing a brand new challenge, technological hurdles that didn't even exist 20 years ago. The rapid rise of electronic financial instruments has completely changed the game. Think about navigating a dense banking app, finding a secure one-time password sent via text, and dealing with two-factor authentication. Let's be real, two-factor authentication is frustrating enough for all of us on a good day. Now imagine trying to process those rapidly expiring codes when your working memory is actively degrading. It's a monumental task. Tests have to adapt rapidly because scammers are absolutely using these frictionless digital avenues to exploit older adults at lightning speed.
And that brings us to our final and frankly most actionable section, proactive strategies for protection, building cognitive guardrails. Knowing all of this, how can we proactively empower older adults and safeguard their independence before a crisis hits? Well, one massive frontier is technology. Because traditional banking demands high visual navigation and razor-sharp working memory, developers must step up and abstract this complexity away. They need to build what experts call technological surrogates. These are systems designed to bypass degrading working memory limits entirely. For example, creating voice-first interfaces where an older adult can simply speak their needs naturally rather than clicking through confusing drop-down menus. Or implementing automated safety rails, like AI that recognizes a person's normal transaction patterns and automatically pauses irregular ones, such as a sudden $10,000 wire transfer to an unknown overseas account. By enforcing these digital cognitive guardrails, platforms insulate estates from catastrophic loss while still letting the older adult maintain their dignity and autonomy.
But beyond tech, on the legal and family side, waiting for a formal diagnosis is just waiting way too long. Families absolutely must have these financial capacity conversations during middle age. Look, I know this is incredibly uncomfortable. Talking to your parents or loved ones about handing over financial control is one of the hardest, most psychologically fraught conversations you can have. It feels like taking away their freedom. But establishing early legal planning and setting up advanced directives for finances while everyone is still of sound mind is non-negotiable. You have to decide in advance exactly how, when, and to whom you will hand over the reins. And most importantly, you have to choose that proxy decision maker incredibly carefully.
There's this quote from Dr. Daniel Marson, a top researcher in this space, that absolutely nails it. He notes that executing a durable power of attorney for finances is the absolute most vital proactive step you can take. However, he warns, and we need to take this seriously, giving a durable power of attorney to someone is also giving them a license to steal, potentially, if they have bad intentions. It's a total double-edged sword. If this document is drawn up too late, or if the power is handed to someone who doesn't prioritize your welfare entirely above their own, the very legal instrument meant to protect you becomes a devastating weapon of exploitation.
So, wrapping up this explainer, we've seen that financial mistakes, not misplaced car keys or forgotten names, are the true early warning signs of cognitive decline. It's a biological reality of the aging brain, rooted in the decay of complex neural networks, not a character flaw. So, before the capacity to make those complex choices fades entirely, I want to leave you with this final urgent thought to consider for yourself and your loved ones. Are your cognitive and legal